Well, hello there.
Hello.
Hello there, friends, lovers. Thank you for joining us. This is 5 minutes. 5 minutes. 5 minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir. And you, and we are glad you are here. Today is Sunday, February 26th. The last Sunday in February. 57th day of the year. 308 days. 308 days left in 2023 to make this your best year yet. We've got a few wins already. We've got a few things that are putting us in the best year column. A few more things to do. Travel adventure coming up. Hope you have the same plan for yourself. Just 302 shopping days until Christmas, 247 days until Halloween. But isn't every day Halloween? I mean, every day Christmas.
Something days. That'll give you enough time to figure out what you're going to dress up as. That's, pace yourself.
Newcomers need to understand Halloween is probably Amy's favorite holiday.
Yes, it is.
And we have a lot of fun with Halloween here on the show. Easter is in 42 days. We have a late Easter this year and St. Patty's Day. Great fun. Hope you've got your green going. 19 days until St. Patrick's Day. Also, happy National Pistachio Day. Although pistachios aren't usually green by the time I get them. I remember when they used to be red. Do they still dye pistachios red?
I don't know why they do, but let us know in the chat if you know this information.
Why
do they dye pistachios red?
Yeah, I mean, they kind of looked cool. And then after a while, you could get them either dyed or undyed, and there's no difference. It's just the color. It's also, it is Orthodox Forgiveness Sunday. Yes.
A-I-O-U and sometimes Y.
That sounds very Orthodox to me. Now, what I like about Orthodox Forgiveness Sunday is not that it has anything to do with Easter or Lent, but just it is Cheesefare. Cheesefare. Fair, like F-A-R-E, like things you would serve. It's a religious holiday, Cheesefare Sunday. Who would have thought? In the church, our Orthodox church, this is the last day in which eating of dairy and egg products is allowed.
Otherwise, a dairy and egg product police will come by your door.
Right.
Knock on your door at 4 a.m.
Let's see. Catholics are not supposed to eat meat on Ash Wednesday, just as they aren't supposed to eat meat on Fridays during Lent. Whoops. I forgot. Oh, wait, I didn't forget. What I gave up for Lent was, this year, I'm giving up self-sacrifice. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. Normally I'm such a good altruist, but no, this year I am giving up self-sacrifice. As much as I love to do it, as much as I want it, as much as the temptation, the devil's on this shoulder, and an even angrier red devil is on this shoulder, I'm giving up self-sacrifice for Lent, which started on Ash Wednesday, February 22nd. If you're Catholic, I would apologize for having fun with this, but you're Catholic. You need to find some fun anyway. So yes. We did a show on trust and forgiveness. Link to it is in the show notes. I only mention it because I am a shameless self-promoter, as all of you should be. Everybody should be a shameless self-promoter. Our show on trust and forgiveness was, well, it's Lent, so I'll say it was damn good.
That's right.
And we did a later episode, if you liked that one, and you will, we did a later episode also called Who Do You Trust? That's also linked to in the show notes. On this date, on this very fine February 26th, it's the birthday of Victor Hugo. Mm-hmm. And we got to visit the grave of Victor Hugo in the Pantheon in Paris, France.
Yes.
Huge shout out to Luke Travers, who was doing one of his art shows I had to cut out earlier. He started at 5 o'clock this afternoon. Never conflict with this show or you will get no audience because, of course, everybody, all of you good people are here. But
so sad.
But yes, we talked. Well, Luke talked about the Musée d'Orsay, which I think is even better than the Louvre.
Oh, it is by far.
I mean, the Louvre has 10 times as many great artworks, but as Luke pointed out, d'Orsay has more modern works, more post-1900 works, more recent and magnificent, and 7 different Bouguereaus in the museum.
And the structure is an old train station.
Beautiful.
And the Musée d'Orsay is just stunning. It's a place to be. It's a place to go. It's a place to get lost in. And
yes. You can lose yourself and find yourself. He asked about it. I said, well, it might have been our favorite museum in Paris. See, a toss-up between that and the Musée des Arts et Métiers.
Yes.
Arts and Measures, or Art and Science.
Yeah.
And that's essentially Paris's version of our Henry Ford Museum.
That's right.
So beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It's also a happy birthday to Levi Strauss. Hugo was born in 1802. Strauss was born in 1829, so not much later.
Oh, I should say this real quick about Victor Hugo. Me and a friend of mine, we are studying Hans of Iceland.
Really?
An early story by Victor Hugo, and we're studying it in the French and then comparing it with the English and learning some new French words. And it's really very fun.
Super sweet.
That right there is sort of like my idea of super fun. Like just completely engaged with it, totally in the flow of it, learning new things, just completely delighted by all the things that we find, and all the different meanings from the different translations. It's really a great time.
I didn't even know you were. I knew you were studying French with friends, but
yes,
that is super cool.
Yes.
To be using Hugo as material for that.
Yes.
Again, birthday of Levi Strauss. If you're a blue jeans kind of person, or especially if you're classic, button fly style, Levi Strauss's birthday today. Born 1829, lived through 1902. It's the birthday of Herbert Henry Dow. Now, we have celebrated the Dow family before as we traveled to Milford, Michigan to visit the Dow house. No,
yes.
Not the Herbert Henry Dow house. Why am I forgetting his name? First name, but of the Dow house architect. It's funny how that happened. Alden B. Thank you. Alden B. Dow house.
Yes, of course.
Yes, Alden B. Dow's house in Milford, Michigan. If you're ever in mid-Michigan, middle of Michigan, you need to tour this house. It's beautiful. You'll see some design cues that you might associate with Frank Lloyd Wright. Dow did study Wright's work, but he was unique, a man unto himself. Beautiful home. They do tours through it now. It's right behind the Dow Gardens, the botanical gardens that the Dow Corporation maintains in Midland, Michigan. So a happy birthday to the man who started it all, Herbert Henry Dow, born in 1866. And lived through 1930. Although most of our birthday celebrations are people who passed away, they are long lifers. For example, Fats Domino was born today, of course, of Ain't That a Shame fame and Blueberry Hill and Blue Monday and Walking to New Orleans. So happy birthday to the late Fats. We just lost Fats Domino in 2017.
Yes.
Which I love. I love that he lived to be 89 years old.
I know.
Another one that we lost too soon, the Man in Black, Johnny Cash. Mm-hmm. We lost him in 2003, but that was a good long life. He lived to be 71 years old. So, go on your music app or your YouTube and bring up I Walk the Line and Ring of Fire. Or if you're a Shel Silverstein fan, A Boy Named Sue. Some of you might now know that Shel Silverstein, yes, the poet, the guy behind The Giving Tree that we like to pick on for its altruistic themes, which we'll get into today. Mm-hmm. But that is the man who wrote A Boy Called Sue, which Johnny made famous. So, the Man in Black. Finally, one more birthday, somebody who's still with us, still alive, Mitch Ryder. Yes, a Michigan native, born in Hamtramck. Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels.
That's right.
Famous, of course, for songs like C.C. Ryder. Actually, C.C. Ryder was an old blues tune, but he married it to Jenny Take a Ride. I love that sweet C.C. Ryder, Jenny Take a Ride, and Devil with the Blue Dress. Mitch Ryder's great. So, happy birthday. 78 years old, Michigan native, still out there doing his thing.
Very good.
Super cool.
Yeah.
I'm just going to check the chat real quick here.
Yeah.
Oh, you're keeping up on it. Okay, you've got them covered.
I am. Shout out to everybody. Jim, Chris, Paul, Petya,
Jim,
Linda. Hey, Linda.
Jim Ashley, the shameless author, because he has nothing to be ashamed of. Great writer. If you're not already friends or following Jim Ashley on Facebook, do that so that you can read the writing that he does on philosophical themes, especially using movies as examples. But he says, and he's said things like this before, he says, I can only shamefully promote my singing. There's no shame in that. I have friends, actually I have family, who will not sing karaoke, and some of them to the extent where they say they don't even sing in private. Everybody ought to sing, no matter how bad a singer you are. We have had karaoke parties with people whose voice would break glass. Everybody is welcome. If you are one of those glass breakers, wear it proudly. Spotlight should be on you. Fortunately, Jim has plenty of other reasons for Spotlight to be on him. as well. But that is fun and funny. This week, what happened this week? Well, as far as what we were listening to this week, I did do a couple podcasts. Remember the week before I took a day off. So I only did the Valiant one, the James Valiant, Keeping It Real. But this week I did an episode of Life on Earth, Objectivism on One Foot, and Life in 4 Words or less. If you want to know what the 4 words are that describe my life's philosophy, you'll have to listen to that episode. But could you come up with just 4 words? I think at the time I asked folks for 10 words or less that describes your life's philosophy. Why would you do that? What's the value in being able to do that? Listen to that episode. James Valiant and I also did an episode called Literature versus Philosophy. Well, we're going to be all about false alternatives today, but we talked about, is literature escapism?
Oh, right.
Is identifying with a character from literature second-handed? Well, Leonard Peikoff discussed all of these questions, gave us answers, and James and I talked about the answers. That was great fun as well.
Apollo says, sing like nobody's listening.
Because they're not. Nobody's paying attention.
And if they are, it's okay.
More power to you.
Yeah.
And finally, Yaron Brook, Dr. Yaron Brook. Nobody ever calls him doctor. We talk about Dr. Harry Binswanger and Dr. Leonard Peikoff. And if you just say Leonard Peikoff, sometimes it feels disrespectful because you didn't say doctor. But very few people refer to Dr. Brook. He's just that kind of guy where you feel like, oh yeah, he's some guy I know. Very casual, very comfortable speaker. But Dr. Yaron Brook posted, he's been traveling, so he hasn't been doing his regular shows as regularly. So he posted, or the folks who manage his streams posted, this was a debate that he held a little bit ago with the IAI, the Institute of Arts and Ideas. And this organization, the Institute of Arts and Ideas, gathered together 3 thinkers on this question. Should we do the Roaring Twenties differently this time? Now, this was when they were looking forward to COVID winding down, and presumably when COVID winds down, it will be like when the Spanish flu was winding down in the early 1900s, and it was immediately followed by the Roaring Twenties, a decade of hedonism and decadence, or at least, if you read The Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald, you would say the Roaring Twenties, but it led to the Great Depression. So this organization, the IAI, the Institute of Arts and Ideas, asked the question, should we do the Roaring Twenties differently this time? Might culture in the 21st century not descend deeper into hedonism, but develop toward equality and greater gratitude, and simple things like hugging our friends and family? Or is this puritanical nonsense? I wonder, given that title, how y'all will react to that. Should we do the Roaring Twenties differently this time? And it was interesting because they had 3 guests in. Amy, you listened to part of this.
I did.
So you know what the story is here with these 3 guests. Imagine this. You have Stephen Taylor, who's an author and a lecturer and a researcher, and he knows a little bit about psychology. So pretty smart guy, kind of an ordinary English intellectual. And his specialty is psychology and spirituality. And then they have Yaron Brook on. Yaron, obviously, with a philosophical focus. And the third person they had on was Soma Ghosh, who is a cultural critic, cabaret performer, and founding editor of cult polysexual magazine, The Demented Goddess.
And she's a hostess to many queer raves that blend, heterosexual people with queer people, or however.
It's her mission.
It's her mission. and they get all together and they dance and they have empathy towards each other because they're all dancing. That's.
I wonder if this works better in England. Than it would in the States.
There's no real, exchanging of ideas or meeting of the minds. It's just dancing, which, you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, there could be a little bit more to it.
So it was just funny. I mean, this way out of left field, I don't mean left, right, leftist, but just not even that, but way
Well.
out of left field. And then this guy who was kind of ordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, he was smart. He knew psychology and he had some perspectives on spirituality, but that meant he had kind of the normal perspective on, well, the good life, happiness, is found in community. And, a certain amount of self-assertion, but also a healthy dose of altruism.
Yeah, I mean, he said it, okay, it's really cringy when people say this, that he basically said that the most meaning you can get out of life is through helping others. That is your moral high bar, is to focus on other people's needs and to fulfill those needs and to mitigate suffering. Mitigate suffering, those are my most hated 2 words ever.
But that really is the core of it.
It is.
If you get thinkers who are a little deeper and will actually try to explain to you why altruism, which is a question I always ask, why altruism? But somebody like Sam Harris or Steven Pinker will say, yeah, the basis of it is there's suffering in the world and all of us have a natural desire to fight that. Really?
Well,
do we all, though?
do we?
No, actually we don't. But if we did, wouldn't that be nice? Actually, I think they go a little deeper than wouldn't it be nice, but not much. That's about as deep as it gets.
It's such a low... I mean, first of all, I will get into this a little bit, and where I will repeat again the phrase, altruism is the low bar of morality. But mitigating suffering or relieving suffering, talk about the low bar of human experience.
Yes.
I mean, it is just, it's sure, try to relieve your own suffering in the ways that you can, if you are suffering, but to make that the number one priority in morality is obscene. It is such a, not just a waste of time, it is a waste of life.
Right. And there's something even worse than that, which we're going to talk about. Maybe you can tell us in the chat, what would you guess is even worse than making altruism your number one priority? But first, real quick, because this week, it's Carpe Diem Day. Today is, I don't know why there's one day for it. It seems the day should be every day, right?
Right.
But it is Carpe Diem Day. So if you're one of those people, for example, who hasn't yet seen the film Dead Poets Society, you need to see that movie.
Sure.
It's got a slightly tragic ending, but it's all worth it. It's one of those films where you're like, no, that was kind of what had to happen. Beautiful film, beautiful sentiments, outstanding work, of course, by Robin Williams. Must-see film.
Yeah, my Carpe Diem Day always is my birthday. So whenever I have a birthday, I go out by myself. I go and do some hiking or whatever and just be part of nature or whatever.
Yes.
And I seize the day and I just look for all of the wonderful, pleasant things in the day. And it's just, and I can do productive things as well. But my whole flavoring and coloring of the day is just a little bit brighter, and it's so lovely. So if you need to make your birthday Carpe Diem Day, that's great.
Your birthday is probably the ideal day for that, because that is the day in which you celebrate you.
Yeah.
We did a whole show called Weekends and Holidays, and what is the holiday that your birthday celebrates? And you're celebrating your own very existence.
Yes.
Your life is an end in itself.
That's so wonderful. Yeah.
And so yes, Carpe Diem. You only live once. Or,
Yes.
to quote Mae West, you only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough.
And Linda Cordair is on the chat in Facebook, and she says, live like you mean it.
Live like you mean it.
Yes,
There's a
wonderful.
line from a television show, what was it called? The Newsroom, which I wasn't a big fan of, but it's a great line, in which our protagonist comes back to his job and starts acting really radically, and people are like, why are you doing all these radical things? He's essentially asserting his integrity. And he says, I've decided to live my life as if I'm alive. And it makes the point, of course, as if we're alive. What does that mean? It's a tautology with no meaning. The point is, yes, if you were taking this life seriously, if you really accepted the fact that your time on earth, meaning your time anywhere, is finite, well, we say at the end of your life, if you could buy an extra day, an extra 24 hours, how much would you be willing to pay for it? And yet, how many of us treat any given day as if it's worth approximately nothing? We take it for granted. So yes, YOLO, you only live once. But if you live right, once
is enough.
Now, in the show links, I did include links to a couple extra things. Rick Beato just did a video today.
Oh, did he?
And it was funny because, don't get excited.
Oh.
I loved it. He did a video on Duran Duran's greatest song.
Uh-oh, I know what you're going to say, what it is.
And it's not Amy's favorite Duran Duran song. In fact, I think Amy would say anything from their first 4 albums was better than this song.
Yeah.
But he did a great video analyzing the song Ordinary World. And anything by Rick Beato is great fun. If you're a music theory kind of person like me, if you love that song like I do, give that a listen. The link is in the show notes.
I was just joking.
Yeah, to Amy, that song represents the opposite of everything she loved about Duran Duran
Completely.
when she was young.
You might as well cancel yourselves, guys.
I disagree, but we'll let Amy have the last word.
Thank you. Yeah. But what is my favorite Duran Duran song?
Your favorite Duran Duran song?
Probably.
I don't know, because sometimes it's a quirky one, like Last Chance on the Stairway.
Yes, that one.
And sometimes it's something more mainstream. So I don't know. What would you say today is
probably Last Chance on the Stairway?
Yeah.
Yes, and that was not a mainstream song, but just look it up. It's really, really fun, and It's got xylophones in it, which is just the best.
Just the best. Yeah, mine was always the American version, because the British one is different. But the one released on the British version of the album Rio was Hold Back the Rain. Great Duran Duran song. But anyway, the Rick Beato episode is good to listen to. Link to that is in the show notes. And then one more. It hasn't happened yet. But tomorrow I will be watching on the Ayn Rand Center UK. Mark Pellegrino's got Nicholas Krusek coming on. A gentleman we met when we were in London. He's a music expert.
Yes, Nicholas. That's right. He's
kind of
very
guy
good.
Who he knows more about music than I'll ever forget. And they're doing an episode on Was Beethoven Malevolent? So that's going to be good.
Be? Tomorrow? Nice.
Tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern Time or 6 o'clock in the UK.
I'm proud of Nicholas. He's a good guy.
Yeah, we met him during one of Tal Zafani's sessions. Mm-hmm. So that was great fun and good to get to know the guy a little bit. So yes, links to all that in the show notes. And again, the idea that, well, we want the Roaring Twenties, the next set of Roaring Twenties, not just to be hedonistic. I love this false alternative. Should it be hedonistic or should it be, what, self-assertive, rational? No, altruism. Your choices are mindless self-indulgence or mindless self-sacrifice.
Right, how fun.
Now,
and actually, it's funny because I don't consider the 20s to be hedonistic.
No.
They were wonderful. It was women's right to vote. There were other bad things about it, like the prohibition of alcohol,
yes.
Which was not good.
And the criminal responses to that.
Oh, horrible. And also the responses from the police, the horrible responses, poisoning barrels of whiskey and killing people.
Yeah. Jailhouse Rock. The whole Purple Gang was...
Yeah, the Purple
Gang. The Purple Gang, that's not something to think about. If you're from Detroit, you know what the Purple Gang is.
Or you should.
Yeah.
Yes. But no, I don't. I mean, it was just a carryover of ideas that were already there. And yes, there were all sorts of interesting things put to a video, the actual video recording but that stuff was going on for decades. I mean, so you just have the same expressions that you had before, but it was just a little bit more in your face in the 20s. And I really wish the world wars did not happen because change, better change in the culture, philosophically, it would have just been so much better if there were if the wars didn't happen. But yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've got to talk about altruism for a minute. Now, Ayn Rand fans in the audience all know altruism, that's bad. And we know the reasons why, but I think a little more needs to be said, especially on this occasion, following the false alternative of altruism and hedonism we were given in the Yarrenbrook session with the IAI. We've got 2 different people who are cross-posting between YouTube and Facebook in the chat. I appreciate that. I love to see the activity in both places. And the only thing I would ask is, while you're on the YouTube, please click that like button. Yes. If you like the episode, actually click it. Even if you don't like the episode, just lie for us. We need to get those numbers up. Very much appreciated.
No. No, if you're already here, we know that you just love it. So please go ahead and click like.
I'm only serious. So, yes. And what was that I was looking at? Oh, nope, that was it. And, Christopher says Al Capone. There was so much about, we were talking about that when we talked about On the Waterfront. We watched that recently.
Yes.
Marlon Brando's early triumph. And how there are still gangs. There's still mafia, organized crime. But it's nothing like it was 50, 80, 100 years ago. You don't have the on the waterfront kind of scenarios now like you had then.
Right.
And when I talk about how, yes, there are things that are getting worse, but so many things have gotten better. Add that to the list. Totes, totally true. Altruism, and the thing about altruism, and Amy, you've talked about this before, and I know you've got a lot to say about it. It's a frozen abstraction.
Yeah.
There are people out there, and when Ayn Rand writes about this, you think, yeah, that's what's going on. But it seems a little, if not exaggerated, it seems like maybe we've gotten better. People are smarter than that. And then you listen to these people, and I mean even podcasts of people I like, people I admire, and they're saying exactly this. They speak about altruism as a frozen abstraction. If you don't know the epistemological concept, all that means is they've taken the concept of morality and they've replaced it. They've taken the whole field of morality, and in their minds, altruism is morality. It's the standard of morality.
Yeah.
All the other things we talk about, honesty and integrity and productiveness and justice, all of that's secondary. Those aren't aspects of morality. They are aspects of altruism. That's what it means for it to be a frozen abstraction.
The lowest bar and the lowest bar to action in terms of just, well, I guess I helped somebody today. I guess I can call myself moral. No. There's so much more to morality than just, whether it was related to your values or not. I'm just going to help somebody, whether that's blind or if that was actually purposeful or something, or maybe even parasitical even. Oh, I helped somebody today. Well, it completely is, I guess frozen abstraction is a good term for that.
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with
altruism.
Anything.
Is the standard. It's what morality is.
It is a distraction to what morality actually is,
which is honesty and integrity and productiveness and actually taking action.
It's actually it's maintaining your rational mind.
Yes.
That's what it really comes down to, and acting accordingly.
Yes, which is why rationality is the primary virtue. So I want to read just a quick quote from the introduction to The Virtue of Selfishness that makes this point probably more articulately than I can. Not necessarily better than you could. But Ayn Rand writes, there are 2 moral questions which altruism lumps together into one package deal. 1, what are values? And 2, who should be the beneficiary of values? Altruism substitutes the second for the first. It evades the task of defining a code of moral values, thus leaving man, in fact, without any moral guidance. Altruism declares that any action taken for the benefit of others is good, and any action taken for one's own benefit is evil. Thus, the beneficiary of an action is the only criterion of moral value. And so long as that beneficiary is anybody other than oneself, anything goes.
So when I say things that are kind of really wild and crazy on this show, like too many Christians are amoral heathens, I really mean it.
Yeah.
They haven't discovered what morality is. They haven't thought about it. They haven't understood, why be honest? Most Christians will say, well, it's because you're nice. And it's altruistic if you're honest to other people. Well, what about to yourself? And, what makes it important to be honest in your own mind? And then they're like, well, it's to get you into heaven. They have no clue as to the questions and, what are values? They have no clue.
Yes.
And it's all very much based on dogmatic, unthinking, blind, just gobbledygook.
And tradition.
Yeah, that's gobbledygook.
Quote unquote patriotism. How many times? Think about the forums and Reddit and Facebook, wherever it is that you exchange with people intellectually and in real life, where you have a discussion with. I find this especially with conservatives. You have a discussion about is X, Y, or Z right or wrong. And if it's a political question, sometimes they will be for liberty, they'll be for individual rights on some level. But if it's a moral question, they will say, well, that's not an issue of right or wrong. As long as you leave somebody free, as long as you give somebody liberty, as long as you respect the non-initiation of force principle, then, and to steal Ayn Rand's phrase, anything goes.
Yeah.
You can't judge people. They are virtuous as long as they left you alone. And the idea that morality has anything to offer us besides respect each other's individual rights. I've literally run into people on a regular basis who honestly can't conceive that morality beyond politics is a thing.
Right.
As you've pointed out, Amy, they're just left with no guidance whatsoever. As long as they're altruistic, as long as they give to their church and give to their charities and don't violate anybody else's rights,
yeah,
they can live the best or the worst life in the world, and it has no moral significance to them.
To steal a great phrase from the woke left, do better.
Do better.
I know it's kind of cringy to say that, but no, do better. There's so much more to think about. There's so much more introspecting and guiding yourself morally to do to actually lead to a better and happier life, and to take your values seriously. If your values are other people, we've got a gentleman in the YouTube chat who just says, drives me nuts that my staunch Catholic uncle tries like heck to cheat on his wife.
Yeah, well, as long as he pays his taxes and doesn't violate anybody else's rights.
Or even worse, when they try to justify dishonesty or deceitfulness with, it's for the greater good.
The greater good.
Yeah, no. So do you have more to talk about with regard to the virtue of selfishness, or...
No.
Because I have some things. I have a little workshop.
The only thing I will say to wrap it up will be in regard to the question, well, why? Why altruism? So I would love to hear what you have to say.
Okay. So, I thought about this, and I thought this is something that you can kind of do with Ayn Rand's writings. This is the definition or the description of honesty in Galt's speech in Atlas Shrugged.
Yes.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy, honesty, right? Sure. But like what I said before in terms of maintaining your rational mind, making sure that it's you're thinking clearly, you're acting rationally, you're doing what's right for yourself, you're doing what's meaningful for yourself, you're doing something that is selfish in that way. And by the way, this is just an aside, but whenever I think of selfishness, I think of the term meaningfulness. What is meaningful? What's meaningful and nourishing and enriching to your life is what is selfish. Not how people bring it up nowadays is so lazy in terms of, don't act selfish because, then you'll be a real meanie and you won't live up to the extremely low bar of altruism. It drives me insane. So take Ayn Rand's, I'll read it real quick. Honesty is the recognition of the fact that the unreal is unreal and can have no value. All right, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to go ahead and take just that snippet and translate that into some questions, introspective questions for myself. Now, this is applying morality to my life into my own thinking and trying to figure out where I'm at. So like lately, for instance, I haven't been doing a lot of journaling. I've been feeling pretty scattered. I don't feel like I really know myself all that well. If you've ever had that experience where you're just so busy that you don't have time to kind of check in with yourself. So yeah, if you're not feeling anchored or self-possessed, or if you're feeling unreal to yourself. So going back, honesty is the recognition of the fact that the unreal is unreal and can have no value. Well, if you're feeling unreal to yourself, if you don't feel like you're really connected to what your values are currently, perhaps you're feeling very indecisive, perhaps you're procrastinating, perhaps you're putting things off that should be done, you're feeling unreal to yourself. And it's time to introspect on your values, get to re-know yourself in your current situation. And it's important to do this so that you have a sense of self-value. So, Ayn Rand's formulation is unreal and can have no value. If you feel like you yourself are unreal to yourself, then you are probably having a sense of low self-worth currently. All right, you come along with me for this ride here. So then Ayn Rand goes on and says that neither love nor fame nor cash is a value if obtained by fraud. Okay, so then you can ask yourself, am I lying to myself or to others about anything? Am I procrastinating about doing something? Am I or just trying to lie through omission, or trying to kind of turn away from something that I should be doing, that I'm not? Am I deceiving myself into thinking something that isn't actually true? So you can kind of, don't be afraid to ask yourself these questions, because sometimes it's not so much that you are evading in terms of being an evil person. It's more so that you haven't you haven't set aside time to actually check in with yourself and to know and to value yourself and your values. So then Ayn Rand goes on that an attempt to gain a value by deceiving the mind of others is an act of raising your victims to a position higher than reality, where you become a pawn of their blindness, a slave to their non-thinking and their evasions, while their intelligence, their rationality, their perceptiveness become the enemies that you have to dread and flee from, right? So, if you are, for instance, not just deceiving yourself and you're, say, deceiving other people around you, if you are, do you feel like a pawn? Do you feel like you're constantly vulnerable to their blindness? And that do you feel anxiety that at any moment you will be discovered for your deception? So this is where, in introspection, you ask yourself, do I feel this way? And of course, the feelings are great because those correspond to your thoughts and evaluations. And then you can define those thoughts and evaluations more clearly, right? And then she goes on to say that you do not care to live as a dependent. Now, this is more of a positive here that she's presenting, that you do not care to live as a dependent, least of all a dependent on the stupidity of others, or as a fool whose source of values is the fool's, he succeeds in fooling. So if you are evading about anything, do you feel like, a dependent upon other people? Do you feel out of control of your own life and, feeling dependent upon, feeling helpless and vulnerable, if you are deceiving other people? So if so, do you feel that self-indignation? Do you feel like you want to actually get angry and take action? That's good. That's good. And then she goes on to say that honesty is not a social duty, not a sacrifice for the sake of others, but the most profoundly selfish virtue man can practice. His refusal to sacrifice the reality of his own existence to the deluded consciousness of others. So, what is a meaningful and selfish action? The most selfish action, the most profoundly selfish action you can take, is to be honest with yourself and not elevate other people that you might be deceiving above reality. That you are not deluding yourself, you're refusing to delude yourself, you are insisting on facing those facts, understanding those thoughts and experiences and evaluations that come from your introspection, and facing them and seeing exactly what they are there for and what their meaning is specifically. So do you now feel hope for yourself that you will fix whatever you are evading about, that you care about yourself so much, that you mean so much to yourself, that you will now take that first step to improve your life, to improve yourself, to improve the relationship you have with yourself, and ultimately to improve your own self-worth. And even more than that, to bring about a happy life, to experience life as being benevolent and happy and clearly defined and doable and workable. So anyway, this is what I get out of Ayn Rand's writings. This is just her definition of honesty as presented in John Galt's part in Atlas Shrugged. And this is how you do morality.
Yes. And when you approach it that way, it leaves room for all of the virtues.
Yes.
Including lesser virtues or lesser values, like graciousness and generosity and kindness and empathy and understanding, which turn out to be, when we listen to people like the speaker on the Yarn Brook episode that he posted, half the time when they talk about altruism, that's what they're really talking about. Not self-sacrifice, but empathy and kindred spirits and reaching out and bringing other people into your life and trading.
Yes. Spiritually trading.
And half the time they're talking about real self-sacrifice, and they have to conflate the two because altruism is their standard of value.
Because altruism is lame.
Altruism is lame.
It's the lamest.
But it's all they've got. It's a frozen abstraction. They've got this thing stuck. Like in their dictionary, they've used whiteout on any valid definition and stuck the word altruism there under morality. So let me read one more quote from Ayn Rand. Yes. This is from Philosophy Who Needs It, the collection Philosophy Who Needs It. The essay was Faith and Force, the Destroyers of the Modern World. She says, now, there is one word, a single word, which can blast the morality of altruism out of existence, and which it cannot withstand. The word, why? Why must man live for the sake of others? Why must he be a sacrificial animal? Why is that the good? There is no earthly reason for it. And ladies and gentlemen, in the whole history of philosophy, no earthly reason has ever been given. Close quote. I always come back to that word why. I've done whole posts and essays asking people to tell me what's your best. I don't mean the sarcastic ones, and I don't mean the objectivist explanation, but the best reason you have ever heard or been given for altruism, for adopting altruism as a virtue, much less as a standard for morality. And some people have gotten close, but when they get close, again, they're putting benevolence and empathy and generosity and charity, these values that can be in your life out there. But those are only valid if you haven't replaced morality with altruism, if you actually have a self-assertive, a selfish standard where you can say, oh yeah, there was a disaster and I sent some money there because I want to play a small part in helping those people out. Or, oh yeah, a friend of mine is down on his luck and he's of enormous value to me, so I want to help him out. Or, oh yeah, somebody on the side of the road, they've got a flat tire and this doesn't look like somebody who can handle that. It will be fun. It will be enjoyable for me to be able to, play the hero for a minute. Not in a cocky or braggadocious way, just a benevolent way.
Right.
It's fun. It's enjoyable. It is of value to be empathetic, to be charitable, to be generous. And it reinforces in your own life. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I am strong. I am capable. I can be helpful in these circumstances.
Yeah.
There are so many good motivations. We've talked about them before, and we will talk about them again, for generosity, for charity, for kindness, for empathy. Yes. When it is well-deserved, when it is warranted, when you can afford it, and it's not a sacrifice.
Right. Exactly. Yep. And when it isn't some, like, the low bar, of the morality, the duty, and I did something good today for somebody else. I guess I'm moral.
And replaces every other virtue because charity and generosity and benevolence and kindness and graciousness, those only work if you are self-sufficient. Those are only virtues if you're a good person for all of the other and arguably more important reasons.
And because you're a conceptual and volitional human being.
And you are honest. And you are productive. You are a creator. You have strength. You have actual value.
Yes.
Then yes, from that enormous stockpile, you can now shine. You can now throw it out there. You can go to people who matter to you and say, let's get together. Let's have a party. Let's have a celebration. And we will throw a feast. And no, you don't have to pay for this. You don't have to contribute. Although, when we do Great Lakes Subjectivists, people are welcome to do that. But it's just out of the bounty of your own production.
Right.
And creation.
When I talk about Ayn Rand's, I always talk about Ayn Rand's morality of rational egoism, because that's a great name for it. This was something I wrote on Facebook recently. For morality, many religious people are heathens. They are amoral. Religion has never offered a reasonable or robust moral system. This is true. I mean, the 10 Commandments, give me a break, right? However, we do have one morality called rational egoism that Ayn Rand formulated. It gives clear and well-defined descriptions and applications for honesty, integrity, justice, independence, pride, productiveness, and rationality. It's just the best.
Yes. The 10 Commandments has like a couple good moral commandments, which is a contradiction in terms. Morality can't be commanded. It has to be chosen. But there's 2 good commandments. Don't lie and don't kill people don't murder people. Obviously, you have to kill them in self-defense. And there's a couple good pieces of advice, like honor your parents, but that should all, of course, be if they deserve it.
Yeah.
And most parents do. Yeah, if you want a good take on the 10 Commandments, and if you've never seen it before, look up the late Christopher Hitchens.
Oh, yes.
I didn't put it in the show notes, but do a Google search for Hitchens, Vanity Fair, 10 Commandments, and it will be the first thing that pops up. And it is both clever and insightful and charming and hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. So look that up.
You said something earlier that Christopher Hitchens said.
Well, it's sort of the punchline to the whole presentation. I don't know if I should give it away.
All right.
But yes, it is a very clever line. Give it a watch. Give it a watch. Yeah. And yes, his last line in the presentation is also very funny. But good advice at the same time. Give that a watch. So yes, don't be an altruist. Again, most of the people watching this show know not to be an altruist, but the understanding of, altruism is kicking free thought off of its throne when it comes to morality and replacing it with one commandment.
And not, like I say, I'm not calling all Christians amoral heathens. Some people actually pick up morality through, for instance, self-help books, psychology, strangely enough, through ways that Ayn Rand's ideas have kind of come to other places. I see that sometimes. Morality is not some sort of low bar, self-evident, easy peasy thing of I did a random act of kindness today. No, there's so much more to it. There's so much more to taking good care of yourself.
Yes.
And in doing so, you are setting yourself up for a happy, value-rich life that will include other people and valuing them even more deeply than you would have if you just, did a random act of kindness for them. There's so much more to it. There's so much more richness, and there's so much more reward to get out of morality than people think, than people know. So let's look at the chat here. We've got a lot of comments.
There's some good stuff here. Unsigned 32-bit individualist says, I'd like to see Yaron Brook ask this question about altruism to somebody like Ben Burgess. That would be good. He also says, I bought a Tesla today, so I'm virtuous. I'm guessing he's joking and he didn't really buy a Tesla today. I may be wrong about that. Who knows? And of course, all the Catholics have to do is confess wrongdoing in confession, and they're clean.
Yeah.
Once again, disconnecting real life from morality.
Well, not just that, but putting them through hours or minutes or whatever it is of 50 Hail Marys, 100 Our Fathers, of just rote, memorized stuff.
And what does that do for the person you wronged?
Right.
And the answer is nothing.
Yes.
Christopher Hitchens uses the expression vicarious redemption. As somebody else can pay for your sins. Well, I wonder how your victims feel about that. To hell with that. I wonder how you feel about that. How much has that actually improved your own moral state?
I've done a few times now the presentation about making mistakes and making amends, how that relates to Ayn Rand's fiction. And I love that topic. And making amends is such a great opportunity. If you have done wrong to somebody, then use your rational mind to figure out a way to possibly make amends. See if that person is open to it. If they're not, then that's okay. Call it a day. That's the end of it. But if they are, and if you can say something meaningful to them that shows them that you have learned some things and that you actually might now be of value to them, that is a wonderful opportunity that you should not pass up.
Yeah, if you want forgiveness, you've got to earn it. And not earn it in the sense of pay your dues, but there needs to be a reason for someone to forgive you.
Yes.
It's why I recommend our episode. It's not just because I want to get our view counts up and because I'm cocky. I do want to get our view counts up, and I am cocky, but I do heartily recommend our episode on trust and forgiveness.
Yes.
It was damn good.
It's great.
It really was. If I do say so myself, and I do.
Yes,
Jason Adams of Objectivist Matters says, speaking of benevolence, redemption, honesty, and a bit of Christian saving people, I saw The Whale. See, I've heard about this, so I'm not surprised he's given this recommendation. I saw The Whale yesterday. That was something tough watch. But Brendan Fraser's got some acting chops. That's my understanding as well. I haven't seen it. Probably see it when it comes out on the services, because it seems like it would be a tough one to watch on the big screen, especially.
Yes.
But I have no doubt that you are absolutely right about that. Thou shalt commit adultery, the Wicked Bible, published in 1631 with that mistranscription. Oops, Jim Ashley writes, well, it's before printing presses, they really got that down, and mistakes were made. And man, what fun it would have been if you took that advice. Just kidding, I'm not an advocate of adultery, although I do wonder, do infants enjoy infancy as much as adults enjoy adultery? Yes.
Oh, no.
With that said, I have one more bit of advice to offer you before we wrap. You will occasionally come across, since we're picking on religion today, it wasn't the intention, but we're on a roll. When religious people tell you, hey, you atheists, sure, you talk about irrational morality, you say Ayn Rand has figured out, you don't need religion to figure this stuff out, just look at what's going on out there and figure it out. But really, if you are moral, you atheists, you really got your morality from our book and how it plays out in the culture. Sure, you're not religious. Sure, you don't believe in God. But you've adopted our morality. If you are moral at all, you picked it up from our book and ultimately the traditions and the society and all that. I've heard this time and again. It's so obvious from people like Ben Shapiro make that argument explicitly. My advice to all of you out there, the answer to them is oh, you say I got my morality from your book because of, how it affected society and culture and traditions. How about this? Maybe you got your morality, to the extent that you're moral at all, from every other book that was ever written, from any fact of reality. Yeah, I might have got some ideas from your book. You got all of your ideas from my world. Mm-hmm. Or as I put it when people talk about the separation of church and state, don't pray in my schools and I won't think in your churches.
Yes. Yeah. To all, to anybody who is still struggling with religion out there, it's all right. It's okay. I did actually have on Facebook, there was a question which was atheists, why do you not believe in a God? Now, my first answer to this was a little bit more technical, but this is what I wrote. I said, because consciousness does not have primacy over existence. Okay, so the idea of a God that has consciousness creating material things out of nothing doesn't logically do it. Okay, so, and it goes back to Ayn Rand's idea of existence exists, that consciousness cannot create existence as such, and her formulation that existence is identity, the things that exist and have identity, and consciousness is identification of those things in existence which have identity. So there is no being or God or otherwise who can bring something out of nothing just by wishing it. A consciousness needs to be conscious of something. That's existence, which is existing. And that is what is meant by existence exists. Things just are. They can never be wished into existence, and there is no God or devil or witch or whatever that can do this. And that's really, 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 really important.
Really?
Oh my gosh, how important is that? It's important, and I'll just say this, just for your mental health, just for that.
Now, was this the answer you gave the philosophy students?
No, this was on Facebook.
Well, I mean, Philosophy Matters.
No, this was on some other...
okay, because when people...
It was on Humans of Tumblr.
When I'm asked why I don't believe in God, I have two reasons, and one of which I consider the weak reason, and one of which I consider the strong reason. And it's very simple. I don't believe in God because there's no compelling reason to have that belief. And that's the weak reason, because there's no reason to believe it. You say, well, if that's weak, what's the strong reason? The strong reason is that there's no way to believe in God that makes any sense. The very concept is internally self-contradictory. Mm-hmm. There can't be this kind of thing that you are telling me exists or claiming to believe in.
Yeah.
All of the concepts associated with God, the idea of being infinite or omnipresent or omnibenevolent,
right.
Every single concept is self-contradictory and contradicts every other concept. They told us in college that you can't have a God that is simultaneously omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent. Because, for example, if he's everywhere and all-powerful, then bad things can't happen if he really is omnibenevolent, or if he really is omnibenevolent, etc., etc. Any of the two of those things can't exist with a third one existing. But it turns out, if you study philosophy at all, you'll figure out that, no, you can't have any one of those concepts. There can't be omnibenevolence. There can't be omnipresence. Nothing can be everywhere if anything else exists.
Right.
Nothing can be all-knowing without being everything that exists. And if it's everything that exists, it's not an entity, it's just the word universe. Some people like to say, oh, God is everything. That doesn't actually make any sense. Oh, well, it's metaphorical. Well, it's a metaphor for what? You ask too many questions. So my answer to why don't you believe in God is A, there's no reason to believe in it, and B, I can't believe in it. It's impossible to actually hold the concept in a way that makes any sense.
Yes. And I'll say this too. I mean, in terms of keeping yourself happy and sane, and when I say that, I literally mean this, because I've seen people who have internalized what is called the primacy of consciousness and really, really suffered from this, really ruined their lives on this. This idea that, you start with one deception, you're dishonest perhaps with yourself first and then with other people. And then you start building on that lie and building on that lie and building on that lie. The worst thing that can happen is for you to get away with it. It's for somebody not to stop you in your tracks. It's for somebody not to say, you are not in touch with reality right now, and you are lying to yourself and others, and you are being self-destructive. The whole idea that your consciousness has primacy over existence and over other people, especially, is extremely destructive and extremely toxic. Of course, you're ruining the lives of other people as well as yourself. But when it comes to mental illness, especially, and psychological health, it's extremely important to understand that the world is understandable, that things do have a specific identity, and your consciousness has a specific identity, which means that in order to maintain a healthy psychology, you need to not deceive yourself. You need to be honest with yourself in everything that you do, in every situation you encounter. And yes, so existence exists, reality is real.
Oh, and one more. If you have any question about, I know religious people who are really successful, and some atheists who aren't very successful. How can that be? And in that regard, all I say is, if you're around in the 1980s, some of us were, you will remember that Nancy Reagan, Mrs. Ronald Reagan, kept an official astrologer who would come to the White House and do astrological readings for her. And her husband, Ronnie, would occasionally ask for advice based on the astrological readings that Nancy Reagan had in the freaking White House, the home of the President of the United States. The point there is people compartmentalize.
Yes.
And it's a good thing. I always say nobody in America is actually religious, not in the sense of actually taking all of it seriously. And that's a damned good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that said, I do have a post-it note of the week, but it just says, squeak your wheel. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. In other words, find your spotlight, blow your horn. Get a little extra attention for yourself this week. If you're the kind of person like me who's very quiet and reserved and very shy and not inclined to seek the spotlight or stand on the table, remind yourself, squeak that wheel every now and then. Blow your horn.
I need to be doing that.
Get some grease.
I gotta grease up my squeaky horn.
Raise your hand. Darn right. It's part of my short essay. It comes down to this, which I read on the Thursday show, by the way, so you might recognize that phrase. That's my post-it note. I'm putting it up this week to remind myself, live not only a little larger, but a little louder. Next week, episode 151. Well, this was 150. It sounds like a much more interesting and round number, but episode 151 is our 3-year anniversary. March 5th, which falls right between the original episode 0 on March 1st. Man, 2020. COVID hit 9 days later. It hit before that, but it was big right after that. Our first episode, official number 1, was on March 8th. So next March 5th, 3rd anniversary episode. We're still putting together plans for that. We've talked about doing drunken podcasting, which we had some fun with once. We did a slightly more explicit episode. We talked about romance and sex. And we may do some of that as well. We'll see. We'll see what that third year anniversary celebrate. But it will be a party. It will be a celebration. One way or another, we are going to celebrate. Hope you join us for that. In the meantime, Thank you so much for being here. As always, we wish you success. We wish you happiness. If you want to support the show, robertnasir.com. Click on Patreon or PayPal, whether you want a one-time or a monthly contribution to this show. Please support the work that we do. We thank all of you who do. If you have any ideas for future episodes of this show, please enter them either in the chat or in the 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir Facebook group. That's it. I'm going to wrap. I'm going to do it quick. I'm going to say, you guys are the best audience in video podcasting, the best audience on YouTube. Because lousy people don't come here. Lousy people wouldn't have sat through an hour of this brilliant and insightful conversation. You really are. You, and I'm pointing at you. I hope you know I'm talking to you. You are the best, and we